on the edge of my seat.
Okay, we're live, and I've changed over to a different casting service from StreamYard. I'm on to somebody else now, so I don't even get to see all the comments. Actually, they just all popped up at once. Did you see that? Just
No. Oh,
as soon as I went live, like a bunch of comments popped up.
okay. Maybe that's
Um,
the initial thing. Oh,
as as soon as I went live, like a bunch of comments popped up. Is that
okay.
your
Maybe
side?
that's the initial thing. No. Do you have some speakers
There we
on?
go. No, it's fine. I got rid of it now. Okay. So where were we? We were going to talk about Warhammer today and how woke it is, and how wrong everybody is who thinks that Warhammer is base AF, right?
Well, that's what someone who's into chaos would say.
And anybody who's watching right now on Baron Strawberry stream, we're going to go live on Baron Strawberry for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to disable that stream, and everybody has to run over to the Baron and the Redneck to watch this. This is a series for anybody who's on the Baron Strawberry stream who isn't interested in seeing this particular style of content. This is a little series I'm running called "How to Lose Subscribers" by differentiating the type of video that you put up on your channel crazily. Because I was thinking that the first like 250 subscribers I got were people who really, really liked Owen Benjamin, and then after that, the next 500 were probably people who hate him. And then it was,
Mhm.
I got a maybe 1,000 or so from just streaming about random stuff, and then I got a lot, like 1,500 from John Waters. So
Yeah.
there's a very mixed bag of people who watch my stream.
Well,
um,
yeah, and if it needs to be clarified again, because you get people from like John Waters, and they're not very fond of people who tend to have my accent.
no,
To remind people, I'm a Serb. I'm not British. My
yeah.
car is resistant to certain devices.
If Posh, so anyway, if people can tell us in the chat if Posh is very loud,
Oh yeah,
it might just be my headset that's making it sound like that. But if he is, let me know. Okay, we got some comments. I'll call out the comments and then we'll get straight into the content, Posh. Right? So we have
right.
Buzzwrecker saying niche conversations for niche people. No, it's not. Warhammer is not 2024. Warhammer is just growing all the time. Um, so he also says this stream would be better spent discussing the anti-Bear Bears' recent civil war. Yeah, there's been a civil war among the bear haters. I'm not quite in on it, the anti-Bear Bear war, but I know that there's something big going on, and people are in trouble and people are falling out. And I was kind of listening to Liz today, and she was giving out to what's his name, Texas Goat Radio, and there's a whole big war going on, big fallout.
Nice.
Um, yeah, I
Do you
have
know
to.
where there is so there's been a Horus heresy?
Yeah, it's perfect timing, right? There's been a heresy, but yeah, I don't know enough about it to comment specifically, but it sounds
And
crazy.
I couldn't be beaten into giving a damn.
So everybody else is saying, "Yo." Irene says, "Sound seems good." The only person who answers my question, the legend that is Irene. Um, okay, so yes, Posh. Today we are going to be talking about Warhammer 40k, and there's been a recent a recent surge in wokeism
Yeah.
seeping into Warhammer, and also a sort of an empowerment among some of the newer Warhammer fans to say, well, Warhammer's always been woke because the guys who wrote it were lefties, and the guys who came up with the original idea were lefties. Lefties in the 80s, by the way, in the UK are very, very, very different than what we call lefties now. Just to be clear, guys, but we'll get into some of that.
I like how I didn't I put my name as something else and it still shows my name. My name isn't hidden or anything, but I changed it. Okay, but nevertheless, I just noticed it. Um, so what prompted this a couple of days ago? I saw a post uh, that was about how right wingers are so stupid for being all pro Warhammer because they don't get how it's satire. And
Mhm.
people in the comments were saying, "How is it satire? If you don't even understand how it's satire, I don't even know what to do with you." Because they can't really do anything.
Mm.
It's this is what we'll talk about today. We're about some general law and why I think it's one of the uh, better thought out laws that you can find around, all sorts of fandoms. I think
Mhm.
much better than like Star Wars or something,
Oh yes,
or,
of course.
because a lot of it is improvised. Obviously, a lot of it I don't like how it's used for just pushing an agenda. You know how some entity appears and it's so bloody powerful, and then I don't know, the Black Templars come in and defeat it, and it's like using it as a power move to show how powerful a faction is or whatever.
Mhm.
So there are problems with it. It's still a developing story, right? Still content coming out, but it's not satire. And I'm very much aware that the emperor like destroyed religion and stuff. uh, so how isn't it an excellent turn of events that it ends up producing the what do they call, like, uh,
The Chaos Gods.
space Nazi zealots, religious zealots, and a very oppressive religion? I think that's a brilliant plot development,
Yeah,
right?
and that is ultimately what's amazing about it is that even if it let's just grant entirely that the whole thing, start to finish, bottom to top, is satire,
Yeah,
that doesn't preclude the fact that maybe it follows a logical string, and that
yeah,
you can therefore interpret and take a side, and you don't have to take the side of the author. You
and
know,
yeah, and if it is satire, it's horrible satire.
yeah.
Like the example I gave you when we were talking was okay. So imagine it's satire about religion, and you hear a guy hears voices in his head, but the voices are, "Oh, you shouldn't drink too much, you know. Maybe don't get dessert. You've been putting on a few pounds. You should really start shedding those. You need to keep your cardiovascular system healthy and stuff." Like, wow, a great satire of religion.
Yeah, yeah. So do you want to start us off, because this was really your topic? So do you want
Yeah,
to get us going on how you'd like to kind of lead us into it?
right. So there's quite a bit of law which we won't be delving into very deeply. So we're addressing things on a more or less surface level, or like an all round. Uh, uh, Basically, what happens is you have humanity. Humanity is enslaved by the Eldar, which are like the old ones, like this most ancient and advanced race in the galaxy. They're very powerful, very advanced, enslave humanity. Um, a portion of them, correct me if I'm wrong on anything I haven't read in quite a while.
That's
Uh,
fine.
so a portion of them become very hedonistic. They start, torturing different races and stuff, including humanity. And this triggers an event, which is the birth of this chaos entity called Slanesh. And the vast majority of them, I think the vast majority of them were wiped out immediately. Is that correct?
A huge amount of them. Well, it was no, I don't know how much of them were wiped out, but certainly it destroyed the planet where they arrived. Right, where Slaanesh arrived. She
Yeah,
was born.
yeah. So this entity is born out of this debauchery that a portion of the Eldars were engaged in and are now known as the Dark Eldar, the Drakari. Um, so you have the birth of this god of excess, goddess of excess, that now has hold over their souls, but that's not pertinent to what we're talking about. But even then, there you see, debauchery produces, the extreme debauchery produces such a whiplash whereby people are they're experiencing such hardships they barely can keep their souls and stuff. They have to use those crystals, whatever they're called. So that race falls from grace due to its excess. And what also happens is there's this fellow, we will call him the Big E.
So the emperor of mankind.
Yeah, so he is this 15-foot fellow who starts organizing the human race basically to try to expel and free humanity. Um, so he gathers like people and he produces like his sons and whatever. Again, not to go into the Primarchs, not too important right now, but he has his sons, right? The Primarchs. Uh, and they start this giant crusade. They basically unify humanity by force. Um, he abolishes all religion because that's like a hindrance to humanity's unity and freedom and progress. And he is very successful in this endeavor. So this is the birth of the Imperium of Man.
Mhm.
This scientific, very advanced, very powerful civilization. Lots of stuff happens. Basically, we get to the Horus heresy, which is one of his sons rebels, kills Sanguinius, right? Horus kills
And guys, by the
Sanguinius.
way, just in case, so there's a lot of things that he's kind of brushing over. He's brushing over like hundreds of books of lore here, just trying to tip on major plot points in order to make the point that we're going to be making about wokeness and 40k. But depending on how well this does, we actually, both of us happened, it's one thing that kind of connects us both is that we're both interested in Warhammer lore. So I have been proposing that we try and do multiple streams diving into the
The
sort of,
specifics, yeah.
yeah, like the Christian symbolism that's just spread throughout 40k. And
Intentionally or unintentionally. So,
yeah. The
but
whole
it's there.
thing. Yeah, the
And
whole thing is the
we have confirmation that Jonathan Pageau, imagine if he went on
yeah.
Warhammer symbolism. Right, but you have this great empire of rationality that now reaches this rebellion point where what's his name? Horus, one of the sons, one of the Primarchs, rebels, kills another Primarch, and mortally wounds the Emperor of Mankind. He is then put in this giant throne, basically, thing that's sort of a life support system. He's neither alive nor dead in that sense, but he is a very powerful psychic entity, right? Still can affect everything throughout the empire, and it becomes worshipped as a god, and that's where you get the term God Emperor. And you will hear a lot of a lot of slogans all throughout the internet being used by him. And so this rational scientific empire, I don't know if it, okay, it actually does devolve. Let's be honest.
yeah.
Suddenly
He
falls
spread
critique.
consumed by the secular truth, right?
Right. So it becomes this extremely oppressive, dogmatic religion of the worship of the emperor. The most of
Because
the time,
the emperor has freed mankind from the worship of God.
yeah,
Right, so now they worship him for the freedom that he has given them, and he protects them. He protects them no matter where they are in the universe. Right,
right.
if they're in dire straits, they think of the emperor and they say the emperor
Pray
protects.
to him. They sing hymns. They wear all of the regalia commemorating him and stuff. So it becomes very religious. They have an inquisition. That's how religious it is. And if you thought the Spanish Inquisition was bad, right? So this is a point to look back on it a bit. We started saying it's satire, so it's supposed to be like a critique of like fascism or whatever, and clero fascism, like this religious dimension to it. But the thing is, they're fighting an actual horrible force in the universe. So, on the one hand, you will hear them being called space Nazis. Why? Because nothing except for humans and some types of demi-humans are tolerated. So, no Xenos. Suffer not the Xeno to live.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, look, they're all racist, ha ha ha. Okay, so let's let you talk a bit. Who's your favorite Xeno race as far as opposing the Imperium?
Oh, well, Xeno race probably the Tyranids.
Yeah.
They seem to be they're obviously the biggest threat, right? Although you're going to get people who argue about that, but
Yeah, are they fleeing from something worse?
yeah.
There's only so much you can bump things up, okay? Like, calm down.
Yeah, so that's like the whole question is whether or not so the argument that's being made by sort of liberals now is that's what's being satired is like an ethno state, right?
Yeah.
Um, and kind of xenophobia, the way we use it. There's certainly a bit of xenophobia in Warhammer, but it's it's not it's xenosphobia, right? But they're faced with a universe that's absolutely covered with threats from every direction, and there seems to be only a way to keep humanity alive, right? There's massive races of aliens that are basically like giant ants that eat everything that they see. They can shoot acid and all sorts everywhere. They've got their own people who've turned to the various demon gods, and now they're trying to infest their planets with their belief systems and destroy them from the inside. And it's just like there's just threats everywhere. And all of this time, they have to keep their only way that humans can travel around space alive, right? Is by feeding souls into the throne that the emperor is in, right?
Yeah.
So without that, it collapses. The whole system collapses, and then they just all get eaten by the Tyranids and the orcs and
Right. So just
everything
just
else.
to expand a bit on the Tyranids. So they're this like insectoid like entities. They travel in giant hive fleets, and they just go planet to planet and eat anything that is life producing. And they're the biggest threat,
Mhm.
arguably, in the entire galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. And there's just endless numbers of them. And that's one form of xeno you would find in the. You have the orcs who reproduce, asexually, like through spores and stuff. So there's masses of them. They're also a bit of a comic relief. They're sort of retarded, but they're very warlike. They slaughter everything. They go into war mode called the War. Um, I won't do impressions. People are suffering enough, I see from the comments.
Wah! Yeah, so the orcs, they're like genderless.
Yeah,
That's one of the things that they hop on, is that the orcs are genderless. Like, come on, guys, it's woke. Right?
yeah. But they're feisty mushrooms.
Yeah.
Let's be
Handsome
fair.
Orc says, speaking of orcs, he says, I'd argue it's actually a satire of progressiveness because the current state of the empire of man is the result of the failure of the golden age of technology, which was essentially Star Trek, and the failure of the progressive truth. And there's
Right.
all kinds. I've talked to Posh before this. I've got my own interpretation of what's actually going on in the galaxy of Warhammer. And that's my interpretation that we won't go into today. I'd like to go into that in a separate stream. And he has his version of events. And then there's kind of like the mainstream version of events. And everybody's got like there's a lot of interpretation. I've read I think like 40 novels of Warhammer, right?
Mhm.
And there's people out there who've read 140, 200 novels of Warhammer, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of interpretation that can go into figuring out this world, like, and what's happening.
Yeah. But so back to the general law, you've got these orcs. They attack and kill everything. They have fun with it. So they're innumerable, basically. Also, they have they love war. That's what they live for, and piracy and stuff. um, so you've got those Xenos. You've got what's left of the Eldar, who are sort of scurrying about their dying race. You've got the Necrons, the the Egyptian emo skeletons, as they're known. So this also an ancient race that sort of devolved into this
Yeah.
these like metallic bodies,
Who
and
by themselves are a very threatening.
yeah, After the Eldar, they're the
There
most
must be a
advanced.
delay because I said that a while ago.
You are glitching out a bit.
Okay, okay. You keep talking, and what I'll do is I'll just try and fix that. I can see that my reception for some reason here is low, so I'll
Okay,
figure that out. You just keep talking.
no problem. So you've got like the Necrons who are reduced to this like robotic existence. They're like space skeletons, but they're very technologically advanced, and they're in like tomb worlds and sleeping and stuff, and they have their problems, but they're very, very destructive of anything that isn't them. They're very arrogant in that sense. Um, so you don't tend to meet friendly Xenos. That's what the point of this is. Not just to talk about as many non-humans as possible, but it's not. They didn't present it as, oh, there are nice people around, and the Imperium is just racist for no reason. They hate all non-humans. No, there are very, very, very legitimate threats that exist. So that's why I said if it's satire, it's horribly bad satire.
Mm-hmm.
Buzz wants a spanner.
Buzz. Buzz gets give me a spanner. I want to be special again. Yeah, I'll try. I'm trying not to talk now because I'm afraid that I'm so off sync. I don't know why my reception is showing so low. So I'm afraid that I'm so off sync that you're not hearing me for maybe
Uh,
10 seconds after I say what I'm saying.
okay, so I think we're back in sync.
Okay. I think we're back in sync. Yeah, I think so now. I'll just be careful. When I notice that you're speaking over me, I'll be like, okay, something wrong
Okay,
here.
right. Correction, I've been corrected. The Empire is the Tau. The Imperium is the Imperium of Man.
Of course. And the
So
Imperium, it's perfect as well. There's a lot to get into there. Right?
yeah,
Just
I
the
mean, the
Latin.
Imperium is just Latin for empire, or rather, empire is just French for Imperium. If you want to go via that route. During the Age of Strife, all alien life that were nominally friendly with humans took advantage of humans and enslaved, conquered, genocided the whole 9 yards, traumatized humanity forever. Yeah. So if you want to go via that route, the humanity was the oppressed one, so they have no fond memories. In the progressive worldview, it's like, oh, blacks went through slavery, so they can loot. Nowadays, it's reparations. Okay, everything the Imperium does is for reparations. It's much more a critique of progressivism than it
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
critique of against some right wing ethno-statey religious zealotry. Because again, everything's justified by the reality they inhabit. Even with all the barriers they put up, it still is pretty hellish, right? It's
Yeah.
not Star Trekky where they just travel around having fun. Occasionally, they go and have some problems, some hiccups. No, it's genocide all over the place.
Yeah, it's absolute chaos, right? Um,
Chaos undivided.
yeah, indeed.
So, okay, since you're the expert on chaos, give us some background on the chaos gods.
So, well, with the chaos, actually, you know what I did do. Well, I'll just explain it. But if my audio starts to go bad, let me know. So, clearly, you've got this thread of the chaos gods. There's four of them, and they together, I think you could argue they represent all possible sin, right?
Yeah,
But but nominally, they all sort of represent one sin or one sort of general way of being, and that'd be one of them is kind of wrath, and one of them is um, slave to experience. One of them, which often
Texas.
it often gets messed up by people in even in the forums, the fans of that god Slanesh will say it's about lust. It's just lust, 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 and it's all big titty
Yeah,
demons and so on. But
yeah, yeah.
there's so much more to the whole Slanesh idea, and it's very applicable. But then there's Nurgle, who would be death and decay and rebirth, and Zinch, which is change. So Zinch is like intellectualism and pride and study and these kinds of things,
Yeah,
right?
and deceit, intellectual deceit.
Yeah, yeah, and ultimately change, right? So it's about
Right.
it's about progressivism, and it's just that worship of change, right, over what works. Um, not so much in the lore, right? But you can argue these things.
Yeah.
Um,
So that super chat, let's address it because
Kirk T, 20 Canadian dollars. Thank you very much, Kirk. I really appreciate it. What are your recommendations to introduce children to the Warhammer 40k context? The kiddo loves the winged hussars. God bless you both. Please answer later if this would derail the current topic. I know there are some Warhammer for Kids books out there, but I have never personally read them, so I don't
me
know.
neither.
I can't
Uh,
necessarily recommend them. It's like a Necron book, and it's about some kids who like travel to like a Necron tomb world and then have to escape or something like this. I can't remember.
okay, I'm not aware of those. I actually stumbled upon Warhammer completely accidentally when I was 10. I've never had the tabletop. That's for rich people. Uh, but I played the Dawn of War game, like Warhammer 40k Dawn of War, the first one. I had no idea what's going on. There's some guy shouting for the Emperor. There's some orcs going, orcs, 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 orcs. Whale mo, rail, snaky like. Right. So they are funny. There's the Eldar and then there's Chaos, and they're all
Actually,
pretty
let me
bad.
pause you for a moment. I just remembered. All right, guys. I am gonna at this point disable Baron Strawberry. Please, please, please. If you're watching on the Baron Strawberry stream right now, head on over to the Baron and the Redneck. That is our because Posh Redneck has his own. For so anybody who's watching on Baron Strawberry stream who hasn't watched Posh before, there's the Posh Redneck is his YouTube channel where he discusses primarily orthodoxy, right?
Yeah, and linguistics and philosophy and stuff.
Linguistics and philosophy and orthodoxy. Posh, to anybody watching from Ireland who doesn't know, English isn't even his first language. He's not actually English. He's Serbian and chose to learn English with that accent, which is
Because
hilarious.
of Christopher Lee, who was
Because of Christopher
Italian
Lee.
mostly.
So he's the Posh Redneck. If you want to check him out, he's a linguist and a big pharma shill. And
Yes.
but we have a joint channel now where we discuss things that we're both interested in on the Baron and the Redneck. So please head on over there now because I'm going to disable Baron Strawberry stream in 3, 2, 1.
Nice choice.
Okay.
Nice choice of which fingers to put down first. Um, so back to our topic. So you mentioned like someone does agree with the idea of the Dawn of War 1, the PC game. That's the one I played. And again, I happened upon it by accident. And I am a massive RTS fan, like real time strategy. So it was lovely. And as time went on, I didn't even have like internet at the time.
Yeah.
So it just looks cool.
That's like Ireland in the 90s. We had the internet, but it was definitely way too slow to do anything but like
Oh yeah, yeah,
download
yeah, and you
documents.
didn't have like the
Yeah.
forums and everything set up,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least
yeah,
not to
yeah.
the extent that you can today. Um, but I played the campaign and stuff. If you get that one, but just the other day I bought like the whole thing, like a bundle on Steam. Like that one, you get the Winter Assault expansion, Dark Crusade expansion, and Soulstorm. Right, each with more playable races as it moves on.
Yeah.
So I think they made some anniversary edition rather recently for the first one, but that's as far as I can introduce them because it will develop an interest if you play like Space Marine. With the second one being a massive hit right now, I've still to play it. I did play the first one. Like it just would make a lot of sense.
Oh,
Um,
I hope that guy moved over with us actually because he asked that question. I'd say on my channel because we don't have super chats here, so we might have just
yeah,
cut him
yeah.
off. But bad timing.
Well, we
But
mentioned it a couple of times that he was good for a while. Did you like give them a link to move over here?
Yes, I did earlier. I
Okay,
gave them a link earlier.
okay.
So hopefully, and I said the Baron and the Redneck, the Baron and the Redneck. Hopefully, not everybody followed, but hopefully that guy came because I did want to answer his question myself. Oh, he's
Okay,
here.
he's
There we
here.
go.
Good.
Okay, great.
So,
So
go ahead.
yeah, so what I was going to say was, yeah, the video games are great. It depends on the age of the kids, obviously, and like some of the video games can be violent. For me, with my kids, I introduced them because my oldest daughter, she is now 10, but when she was probably 6, she just saw an open kind of book that had the Thousand Suns on it, and she just thought
Hmm.
they looked so cool, like all the Egyptian and the gold and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
blue, like. So for her, that was just unbelievable. But so then she wanted to know, and my kids love me when I tell them stories, and I can tell the Warhammer stories, removing the gratuitous violence and the brutality and everything else, and I can kind of get into the deeper themes with them and deliver it that way.
I think a good thing to bear in mind is that because you're trying to, keep the gore at a minimum, the strategy games are far less gory for
Yeah,
obvious reasons. The interfacing is of a more docile nature, but um, it's also not everyone's cup of tea. Um, a lot of people don't like to play. I wouldn't recommend like playing like that Tau Warrior, whatever that was, because the Tau are my third favorite race, but they're still
really.
filthy commies. Yeah,
I can't get into the Tau at all.
I don't know. I really like them. Again, I played Soulstorm and Dark Crusade before I really got into the lore.
Hmm.
So, as far as I was concerned, they're just people who can shoot from really afar. So, and I like those types of strategies
Hmm.
um, because obviously, if it becomes melee, you're done. It's over. Um, but and like they're really advanced and stuff, and I can get behind that. So my first is Imperium, second Necron, third Tau, and the
Yeah,
space elves can go to Slanesh as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. It's funny. Mine are probably like, well, chaos. If you're going to just say chaos in general, then fine, chaos. But like within that, I'd be taking favorites. But once chaos is out of the way, we're looking at orcs maybe, or
Oh goodness! What about the Imperium? Huh? Not
I
even.
do know. No, obviously, I like the Imperium. The Imperium. See, it depends what I'm looking at in terms of the lore. Like we'll cover it in a different topic, but we've all got our own theories on what's actually going on. So I think Chaos are the good guys. But
At least they're honest, except for the Zinch, Zinch part. That's not the most honest one. Um,
Yokai says, so if you remove the Warhammer from the 40K, then you can tell it to children. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, but they do love the stories. Like I can tell like about uh you could tell the whole story of Angron. You don't have to get into the details of every fight he gets in, but you can talk about him crash landing as a child on a planet that's full of gladiators, and you can show his rise through that, and you can explain to your kids about all these friendships that he made and then his
yeah.
ultimate failure, and then you can kind of get
Missing
into.
missing out on the whole nails in the head that cause him immense pain all the time. maybe
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
maybe
yeah,
you can skip that part.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So he
See,
would be your favorite, right, Angron?
I like. No, he wouldn't be my favorite Primarch. I don't know. Maybe who my favorite Primarch is. Probably
Fulgrim, definitely.
Fulgrim. Yeah, yeah, Fulgrim's great.
How can
Uh,
anyone like that guy? He's the worst,
he's
honestly.
just like he's the ultimate. He's the ultimate like sort of opera going, scarf wearing.
Yeah, yeah. He's like
Um,
California. If you turn a California into a Primarch, you get Fulgrim.
yeah, yeah.
But again, let's go back to explaining chaos. So you mentioned Korn, the god of wrath. He's like he wants you to kill everyone and everything in combat, right?
Hmm.
Not big on magic and stuff. Mostly just bash things with other things, and you're good. If you've heard blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, that's the guy. That's the blood god. The second one you mentioned was Slanesh,
Slanesh. Yeah,
right? So this goddess of Axis, we mentioned how she came to be. Um, then you mentioned Zinj. Um he is like this trickster
And
deity,
Nurgle.
and you've got Nurgle. Um, if the Wokes made 40k, there would be
There we
a
go. That's the idea.
faction full of only strong female characters. Uh, they would never design the Sisters of Battle
This
because,
is the this is the memes at the moment that they're making fun of people like us with. You know,
yeah,
it's this style of argument. It's like if the wokes made it, it'd be like this,
yeah,
and then
I've never heard anyone complain about Sisters of Battle from the evil right wing. But let's not forget that they are fanatically devoted to a man.
they'd make a Space Marine chapter inspired by gay liberals, a gay liberal art poet.
They would make a good plague marine. Um, right.
Anyway, as you were saying, yeah. So we have the four Chaos Gods, and these are
Wait,
tremendously.
we just mentioned Nurgle. We didn't say he's like the god of disease and plague and stuff. He
Mhm.
makes you immortal, but in exchange, you just slowly fade away and just become a drone. He's like keeping you hopped up on drugs, but you're not that aware of it. You feel no pain and stuff. So he gives you the. Uh, everyone makes like the Papa Nurgle jokes.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
he's like the only nice guy. No, he's not. He gives you a disease and then offers you a cure for eternal servitude, and you becoming like revolting and disgusting and pus.
Yeah, your body's falling apart and you're growing mouths where there used to be mouths. Like you've got the monkeypox.
Yeah.
You've 100
Speaking
percent
of gay liberals,
you've 100% got the monkeypox at this point, and but you're happy about it because you're so hopped
yeah.
up on drugs. So I don't know who they're supposed to represent, but
I don't know which chapter got infected by Nurgle, and there was a psychic emission that sort of split their connection to Nurgle for a moment, and they all started screaming in terror because the first time they realized what they've become. I can't remember which story that exactly is, but that's he's like a drug dealer. He is big pharma, a very big pharma.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you have Zinch.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, sorry. So you gave the description of Slanesh, did you? Yeah, you did. And then
Mhm.
Nurgle. So then Zinch is the god of change, and it's a far more complicated god to just summarize and work down. But like, um, it's sort of like it's Faustian deals,
Yeah, that's
Faustian
his
deals
specialty.
all the way up, right? And it represents people who strive for gnosis and people who worship their own intellect and want to be able to, if they just learn that one extra new secret spiritual truth, then they won't need God. You know, like
Yeah, and he tricks you again.
hmm.
That's the point of the Chaos Gods, except for Korn, I suppose. Just go and kill stuff. That's the deal,
Yeah,
and he'll
Corn's
reward
totally
you if
on
you're
it.
good at it. That's why I said I can respect Korn. If I had to choose a Chaos faction, it would be the Core Knights. Um, but the thing is, these vast entities uh, they affect the universe, right? They're not some Petersonian archetype that you. No, no, no. They actually affect people. They convert people. They open up portals, and just billions of these horrors pour out and slaughter and torture everything in sight.
Hmm. It
So
depends what you mean by chaos gods.
depends on what you mean. Are they really gods? But yeah, so if you wanted to satirize religious zealotry in the Imperium, it would be like, okay, they're paranoid over nothing or something small, and they're making stuff up as they go along, which is not how the ecclesiarchy works, right? The church, for all intents and purposes, is exists because you can have one human falling to chaos, and that triggering a domino effect where the entire planet is consumed by demons.
Hmm.
So you would suppose that you would try to prevent such a thing, because it's not about, it doesn't leave a lot of room for tolerance. You
Yeah,
know, I'll worship my gods, you worship your god emperor. No, that's not how it plays out.
yeah,
You will either have complete destruction through extremely violent and gory means,
yeah,
uh, or you will have this fanatical thing. And that's a whole problem of also why the Imperium of man during this age of enlightenment and reason, like they didn't really have to deal with chaos.
but
But
there's no based value, and there's no nobody based or red pilled has ever said that we should cut off our hand if it would cause us to sin, have they?
no, no, they say just tolerate whatever people do. That's the classic red pill move. So it's outstanding that you can't legitimize all the extremism through law, but then say it's satire. And I don't see how, if it's xenophobia, we talked about it. You're dealing with mostly hostile races, and then with that being your experience, and then historically also having not very great experiences with aliens, uh, you're not going to take your chances. I mean, the Tau, whom you don't like, they basically they're like the super developed people, in the sense of they are a very young society, but very quickly advanced through technology and develop very powerful weaponry. And they're sort of like the naive guys. They don't exactly know how bad things are. You know, you have episodes like one hive city of humans has more humans in it than all the Tau that exist.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
sort of shocked. I think that's a bit overused as a plot device. Oh, no, look, they found a dreadnought that's older than their entire empire. Right. So there are aspects of it, but they're sort of this young race. They're not aware of how grim dark the world, the universe is, but they're sort of, you know, pretty good at what they do because they're so technologically advanced. But they're very few in numbers and very limited because of that. And I don't know. I hope it develops into them somehow becoming a bit more based. I don't like the whole, oh, they are, you know, just prancing around with their suits and stuff. Yeah, that's my entire point. You can't. The demons are actually real,
hmm,
and they will torture you and eat you and whatnot. So it's, if you're trying to satirize Christianity because it's just a bunch of fairy tales, okay, not a good way to to satirize it by saying no, no, no. There is actually Satan, and there are demons, and they actually mean to destroy you. But why would you be against them? Right?
yeah. So ultimately, the overarching point there was we're kind of just like, so if you're gonna show a universe where you're gonna create real threats all around, the entire of humanity needs to cut off its hand to present it to prevent itself from sinning, needs to keep itself away from these external races who actually want to destroy them all the time, not in their own heads.
Right.
Like, not because they look different or because they're green, but because they really really do want to kill them, and you have to go to eternal war for it. It's not something that you can then go, well, I think the Imperium are right. I don't think that they're bad at all. That if somebody says, oh, you just don't get that it's satire, well, it's like, well, fine, but like I just don't agree with the perspective of the authors. Then I guess, like,
Yeah, if that was the intention, again, the authors suck at satire.
yeah, yeah,
I
because
mean, if
they've
they're
just
trying to say,
presented
"Oh, you should tolerate immigrants," like, okay, but if we follow the law, the immigrants want to kill and torture us. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know. Again, very poor satire, and you know, there's been for a while now a kerfuffle about like introducing more female characters, like female custodies and stuff.
yeah.
Um, and then everyone's against it, but on the corporate level, all the people who are educated. God bless them. I wouldn't wish that on a chaos entity, but in the United States at least, they're trying to push this, and it's one of the worst things or franchises to try and be more inclusive in. Well, we want women space Nazis. Because, right, the people who are suggesting it, they probably don't like the Imperium. Why don't they want female orcs?
Oh, they probably do.
I doubt it.
I've never heard anybody looking for it, but I think they're
Right.
happy enough with the fact that the orcs aren't technically male in their mind, so it's fine.
Yeah. Okay. And by the way, there are pretty powerful females in like the Eldar, right? They've got the Farseers and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've got Necron lords. Bit weird calling them Necron lords if they're like women, I suppose, as much as a formerly female alien and now robot can be female,
Mm-hmm.
right? You've got that, but again, if it's satire and they're all intolerant bigots, close-minded, we want in on that.
Yeah. And like so ultimately what a lot of the arguments come down to around this, because I'm in the forums and I see people having these arguments, and people get very intensely riled up by the female space marines thing on both sides, and both sides think the other side is worse, whereas I couldn't be bothered arguing with these people. But what's obvious about it is, like, there's an there's an ontological issue in terms of what space marines actually are.
Yeah, they're
Where
copies ultimately of the Emperor, like
and it,
ever smaller and weaker copies
yeah,
as you get down to your common Astartes,
yeah,
but still from a man.
yeah. But literally, it's so they'll say, what does it matter? It's only a story. It's fantasy. It's made up. Like they could be all women. Like maybe in this world, women are stronger, and everything. And it's like, okay,
Go write that
fine.
world.
Yeah, fine, maybe. Like it doesn't technically matter at all. But it's fine for me to say, oh yeah, but it doesn't make sense. Like today, my daughter's writing a story because I write a lot, so she writes a lot. So she came to me with this kind of fantasy story idea that she has in her mind, and part of the fantasy story is that one of the main characters is unknowns to herself the antagonist's daughter, right?
Oh,
and
okay.
and but then the the antagonist is doing her plan in order to find her long lost daughter, but then they figure this out in the middle of the story, and I'm like, well, hold on, then why would the antagonist keep doing her plan if she's already found her daughter?
Yeah.
And my daughter's like, oh no. Now
And
I
she's
didn't
like, oh
put
well, why can't she be in a wheelchair?
yeah, and I'm just sitting there beside her. Like I say this, and I didn't say it because I hate antagonists who are mothers or anything like it. I was like, well, hold on, this doesn't make sense. And it's the same with Warhammer. You're just like, well, hold on, that doesn't make sense. And then they're like, why can't they just be women? And it's
Right.
like,
You had an
yeah,
American accent there. You're properly woke. But yeah, it's like keeping consistency. Obviously, when you're engaging in these things, you need to suspend your disbelief, right? Obviously, that's like they're all genetically mutated, 7 foot tall war machines and stuff. So that's not the problem. The problem is inconsistency.
yeah.
Why not make the emperor a woman? It would be an empress, right?
Yeah. You can do whatever you want, really.
Yeah, but if you're going to break the continuity of it, well then what are you invested for?
Yeah. So Brad P comes in. I've heard this kind of argument a lot, actually. He says, why does the 40K universe and its lore exist now? To sell toy soldiers. Lots of the same toy soldiers. So it's a setting, justify war against everything. Well, lots and lots of people are deeply invested in Warhammer lore who have no interest in actually playing the game and have never bought a single toy soldier.
Right,
And many people are only invested in it for the computer games, and some people only for the
like
book.
myself.
Yeah, and some people only for the books. So I don't really agree with this argument. It's also the Warhammer 40K game is a game. So a lot of people who play the game very insistently, casually, right, where there can never be any kind of skill or strategy or anything that goes into the game. It has to be beer and pretzels game, or else they don't play it. They would also use the toy soldiers kind of sloganeering. It's like it's just your toys. It's just your toys. But for some people, it's a game, not just toys. In the same way as chess pieces aren't necessarily toys, like they are, So
You could say that.
there's an argument. There's an argument with the whole toy soldiers thing that's what they're being sold for. I think the story exists, and maybe, and sorry, it was definitely a background story to a game. Like that's what
Yeah.
it was. But it has developed over the course of 30, 40.
What was it like? Pirates of the Caribbean was like a ride, and
Yeah,
it had like a bit of a background, and then became a massive film franchise.
yeah. So like, it's developed. There's hundreds of books, novels at this stage. Some of it with some really well developed, like some of the novels are trash, and some of the novels have really well developed symbolism and concepts and depth to them. And I just don't really buy the whole all it is to sell the toy soldiers, so therefore you can do whatever with the story. Like they can, like the board of directors of Games Workshop can do whatever they want, but it's perfectly fine for people to point out when it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So this is the uh, what we're trying to say. If you can do whatever you want, you are not going to do anything because there is no guiding principle. It's sort of like when Aristotle says that which is held in common is treated like it's held by no one, right? Uh, there were parts as lands were parceled. You had certain pastures which were like common, and what happens is those are always barren because first you're going to take your cattle to graze there, and then you would move on to what's yours.
Mm,
It's a very common, very human thing, right? I won't spend my own if I don't have to, right? And if it's a free for all, there's nothing connects it anymore, and it stops being fun because why would you imagine if would you watch a film that switches films, uh, different films every like 10 minutes? Like, no, I'm not going to bloody watch this.
yeah.
Like, we are very story driven as humans, right?
Hmm.
To have a story arc, we like to have a reason. And if things happen for no reason, it's a basic, you write, it's a basic principle of writing that you shouldn't have superfluous things.
Yeah.
And by superfluous, I mean not even like Tolkien, like in the Silmarillion, like spent 7 pages describing a woodland. No, I mean, what was it? If there's a gun at the beginning of the story, someone better get shot with it by act,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. And
So
anybody who engages any kind of art, this is a theme that's been going back centuries, understands, and really, I think it's any kind of art, understands that once you begin, there's a path laid out for you that you need to follow. Who was it that talked? Was it Michelangelo talked about that with sculpting? That he didn't feel like he was creating. He felt like the statue of David was in the
yeah,
block of
yeah,
stone, and
freeing it from
he was
the
freeing it.
block.
And it's like that when you're writing as well. Is that you can come up with a concept, you can come up with characters, you come up with a world, and then you can write anything you want.
Yeah,
You can make the mother, like in my daughter's case, make the mother just continue with her mission, regardless of the fact that she's already got the goal that she wanted.
yeah,
So, but that doesn't make sense, and everyone's going to see that, and they're not going to want to read it, and it won't make sense to you. So you can't. You're kind of constrained within the realms of logic,
yeah.
and yeah, go on.
I was just agreeing.
Yeah, so you are constrained. So you can't just justify, well, it's only for selling toy soldiers. Well, fine, it still has to kind of make sense.
Yeah, when we're talking about music, you have chord structures. You have all sorts of weird chords with jazz, which isn't music; it's devilry. Um, but you have certain chord progressions, and then you've got very uncomfortable chord progressions, uh, which is still fine, as long as you play things and they have um, a method to them. There's a reasoning behind it, like cadences, right? You've got your regular cadence. You start from 1, 5. Whoops.
Oops.
So you go like this is C, G, C, right? You can go that. You can go 1, 4, 1, and you see there's a completion to it. You start, you move out, and then go back. And there is musical theory about how you go back, because if you just go, what's going on? Even then, I ended on a dominant, so there's still some sense to it
Yeah.
because it's the strongest chord after the first chord, but you can't really. It makes you want to finish it.
Mhm.
There's an incompleteness to it. So if it's what you're looking for is just complete, not disembodied, discombobulation, and it's all over the place. You're playing high notes, low notes, high notes, high notes, low notes. It's just not going to be a piece people would want to listen to. You're just creating sound effects, and that can have its place, I suppose.
And
But
if people are enjoying the song up until the point when you break the chord progression, they have every right to say, "Oh, what's happened?" Like this is
yeah,
not like
it can make you angry. So,
yeah.
right.
Irene's
Sorry.
a musician, so she hears it all the time with especially the '90s kind of boy band music.
Mhm.
She can't listen to it because of the key changes and things that go on in the middle of the song, and she'll be like, "Oh my god, like what's happened?" Like,
Right, that part, like, what's that called? Transmodification. Uh, was that the term? When you have key changes, there are also rules about that. You can have very good key changes,
mhm.
um, but so it's not just you are completely constrained. It's a very old principle of music that you don't even go for just perfect harmony, transposition. Thank you, Chaz.
Cheers.
He's also a musician. Um, so again, rules to transposing, but I lost my train of thought. Um, damn it. I did not expect that, and I thought, where's that coming from? But again, uh, these rules are basically oh yes, I remember. These rules are discovered, but it's an ancient principle. You don't go for perfect harmonies, right? Your unisons, your fifths, your octaves. That's what you keep coming back to. The imperfect harmony is where you get a lot of the texture of the music, but you go to perfect harmony back, to like a safe place, and it has a sense of completion to it. Um, so again, it's not just constant perfection, and we can't achieve it, so there's no point. But if you just play perfect harmonies, you're done. Your choices are so limited, and there is a great sense of tension that can be built with imperfect harmonies and certain types of cadences, right? And then when you get to the relief, it's honestly very satisfying, and naturally so,
Yeah.
right? As I said, it's discovered. It wasn't some guy in a wig
You're in
theorizing.
danger of turning this into a stream about music.
Okay, back to
Brad P says GW made its money on Plastic Man. Yeah, look, Brad, I totally understand that ultimately that's how they make their money. How it still doesn't justify bad
breaking
storytelling.
canon.
Yeah, yeah. And I also agree that they can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
Uh,
but we're not going to sue them
yeah. Like
for
they can.
emotional damage.
Yeah. But if like and there's so many books. There's so many. Like I've only got so much time. I've already read enough Warhammer novels that it's kind of embarrassing to admit it out loud, right? But so I don't think. Even if I was to work my way through the rest of like the Horus Heresy and then start on the early like post heresy books, by the time I would reach the woke content, if they even ever actually release properly woke novels, like I could be in my 70s. Like it's not really a concern for me as such, right? It's not going to affect me. I also don't mind what the guy. I play Warhammer, like I actually play the tabletop game. So I play Warhammer against people who have very different political views than me, Tau players even, and yeah, so no, totally people. I also think I love, like I've made, as I 3D print, and I've 3D printed parts for a guy that I know who wanted to make a bunch of female Cadians. I'm into like people who want to make female whatever they want, if they want to make their army look a certain way, if they want to, whatever they want to do. It's not like a hard line, you can't, people can't do this kind of thing. But if we're going to just discuss the coherency of the lore and how it doesn't make sense to try and break it for like blip in the pan, which we're going to have to do a stream about the death of this stuff, Posh. But really the woke sort of fashion trend that started like in 2014 is sort of coming to an end these days. So to pursue blips in the pan, as Gucci has learned, and right, people in the past, other companies have learned this can come back to bite you in the ass, especially if you ruin what it is that people are invested in, right? Because you lose coherency.
Yeah, and that part you talk about is synonymous with what I said about perfect and imperfect harmony. You don't go for disharmony, right? You can't have the chord be like, or the tritone, the famous. Right, you can have it as an effect, but it really breaks music. So go for imperfect harmonies, all you want.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to still be harmonic. There needs to be coherence to it. And again, you have female Cadians, right? I am aware that we're not talking about current reality, and you have Ogrin and whatnot. Believe me, I'm aware that there aren't 7-foot giants running around in power armor.
Yeah.
So, as I said, I'm willing to grant a lot of it, but then and the problem with the woke is they just want to be parasitic, right? What did Bill Burr say? They don't want their S, they want our S. So, about like starting like female sports.
And then they took him.
Yeah, but the thing is, they don't even watch the sports.
Yeah.
They care about things in theory.
Yeah.
So it's outstanding. So even if it fell apart, they couldn't give a toss.
Yeah. 100%. Like that's why you see all these, you see these sports bars falling apart in America and everything. He said Space Marines were original, just human-sized Primarchs. I actually have some of the old models. I have the original Great Unclean one. I have the original Bloodthirster. Who do I have? I have the original Abaddon the Despoiler. I have a bunch of Karn and a few different things. So yeah, I know how small they are. Like it's funny, like like this is going a little bit deeper into the game now, but like a Demon Prince now would be far bigger than like the original, like Great Unclean one or something.
Yeah, I talked about the fact I liken it to like Dragon Ball. And maybe it was on this channel that we talked about it. Like, okay, so you have a guy who at the beginning of the episode of film, whatever it was, can like destroy half a planet with like a tap of a finger, but then he goes into full fight mode and like maybe like some grass gets destroyed. Like you're really pushing it because they need to continue, right? So if Goku keeps getting more powerful, he needs even more powerful opponents. And at a point, it becomes very ridiculous.
Yeah. What's it called? They actually have a word for it. Power creep is what they call it in the board game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they probably use it in the books too. It's power creep, right? You're constantly chasing one thing that's overpowered with another thing that's overpowered, and
I thought that was Biden's nickname.
Power creep.
Soon to be out of power creep.
Oh, hold on, I've got something for you. Look, will this one work?
Because I can access them too.
Yeah.
Hear them in music.
Yeah, they're in music. Oh, well, that would have been perfect. Posh's jokes from now on will be followed with. Okay.
We're back in 2016.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so, so,
So
so that's basically what we wanted to say for this stream. As far as at least maybe you want to add something, but we are seeing. I hate when people say, "Oh, it's socialism destroying everything." No, no, no. A lot of it is capitalism destroying everything. Like the points are still quite legitimate. Like they're just trying to sell you toy soldiers, so they can't have like peace.
mhm.
Um, People are also complaining about, oh, so the big problem that no one dies in modern cinema. Everyone keeps coming back somehow.
Oh, in what cinema?
In cinema generally,
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
the Emperor Palpatine didn't actually die, and is
Oh,
returned
right.
by
Yeah,
means
yeah,
of somehow Palpatine returned. So, uh, you know, and you can't leave it be because there's more to milk it.
yeah.
And they keep milking old franchises. Everything's a remake. Everything's, uh, you know, uh, what are they called? When you make things before the original thing, like the original trilogy.
Oh, a prequel.
Prequels, yes, prequels and sequels.
Mhm.
Very few sequels, and when they do those, they tend to be worse than the prequels.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just these corporations are just absolutely soulless, right? They can't create, and Games Workshop's no better. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, they're always going to follow what they think people want, and the error they make is they look at social media to try and figure out what people want.
Oh
Um,
goodness, what was that Japanese company that made something because everyone was as a joke? It was some game or film, I don't know. It was so terrible that people started praising it as a joke, and this Japanese company thought, "Oh, we are doing very well," So they started making a sequel, and it was like, "Really?" So, not getting jokes, but also, yeah, social media. It really warps people's perspective. Like it talk about, you know, not all vegans are annoying, but the one you will hear from are the annoying ones because the
mhm.
non-annoying ones are just keeping it to themselves.
Yeah,
So you only hear the annoying people. Likewise, you only hear on social media about politics from people who are very invested in politics, either emotionally or in some other means. Like most people just don't care.
yeah,
They
yeah,
care about how much food costs. They care about how much the rent is, utilities, etc. Whether they can be healthy, whether they can go on vacation. Right? Those are actual concerns of people, and to them, politics is just tangential.
yeah. Still have not got to woke. Um,
Games Workshop.
yeah, he says, still we haven't gotten to woke. At this point, I feel like our conversation has followed so many tangents that I'm lost. Uh, we,
Yeah.
we need a script and we need an order of doing things. We have great ideas, and then, but ultimately, the point we were making is that, or the point that we've had conversations about is that it isn't woke, that it's not
No.
necessarily woke, and that there's a kind of a newish insistence from people who are woke, or whatever, who want to kind of push the idea that it is, and that anybody who tries to interpret stories or look at this symbolism in certain novels, or maybe who feel like they like the Imperium, or they support whatever, that these people, tell me you don't understand the lore
Yeah,
without
yeah.
telling me you don't understand the lore. And
That's one of the worst things that are left from like the smart mouths. Tell me you don't know X without telling me. Like, okay, the only joke that's been more overused, and even that has died down, but it doesn't have the power of snark behind it, which is
mhm.
apparently all millennial humor is about, being snarky. But what did you take a picture of this with a potato?
Yeah, yeah,
Remember that was
yeah.
like everything was. Oh, did you run this on a potato? Okay, make up different jokes.
So ultimately, the point we came in here to try and make, and then maybe got bogged down a little bit on a few things, was that just because, like, so just the points and the ideas that something like, okay, it was originally, the story was come up with by liberal guys, the company itself has made statements where they are quite woke, the policies within the company are woke. They're moving a kind of a woke direction. Um, whatever percentage of the fandom might be woke.
Whoops. Well, there you go. The Inquisition got him. Or maybe I'm gone. I shouldn't be the one gone. My we're off again. So now that I have full undivided power, we're not going like the two Basileoi route, uh, the two consoles. Um, I think what he was trying to say was that even though it could start in a certain way, as things develop, the storyline changes. Justifications for actions within the storyline, or a lack thereof, uh, is what would constitute how it is right now. Right? I can, this entire thing was just a ruse for me to talk about music theory. Um, the Baron has been dethroned. Um, or maybe Irene turned off his internet because he was taking too much. So his PC blue screened. There you go. So if you can hop on back, so we say our farewells to the people, that would be good. If not, I do have the power to end this broadcast. But I'm not a very power hungry individual. You see, I'm just a chill guy. um, so yeah, it's to me it's fascinating the way the lore develops organically. Yeah, I don't use Windows 11 either. Things develop organically. There's great things to contemplate on it. That's why we love stories so much as human beings. There's a there's reason behind it. There are things to glean. Define woke. I define woke as basically identity politics in a progressive direction. So whether it's racial, sexual orientation, or as pertains to sex itself, it is an attempt of the neo-Marxists. So it's just identity politics of the progressive variety, because there are non-progressive identity politics, some of them rather popular, all of them quite filled with hazards. But that's it. I don't know why people get so bogged down when trying to define woke. Like I've heard people break up, sort of like Baron's PC, when they get asked this. But it's not a difficult thing to define. Like obviously, it takes many forms, but I define woke as an identitarian version of liberalism. Yeah, it's definitely there. He is.
I'm back. I was listening to you, so I'm up to speed. You can keep going with what you were talking about, defining woke.
Right.
I'd like to know what the question to follow that would be. Why did he ask you to define woke?
I don't know. As I said, there were people who were asked this and they can't define it. Just identity politics of the progressive variety. So, Yokai, I don't know if you are using liberalism in that sense, in the sense of because in America they sort of use liberal in very strange ways. Consequences of associating with an Imperium enjoy. Yep, your chaos. What do they call them? Not vile powers, ruinous powers of chaos. Just could not contend with the power of the Emperor. Get good. So yeah, he uses the Americans as so progressive. Um, Definitely, it's I'd always go for progressive because I don't know what liberalism means anymore. if you listen to progressives, they use liberal as an insult, right? But then you listen to conservatives, they use liberal as an insult, because
Mhm.
there is genuinely what you could say is this center. How they went with like based centrists or whatever they try to make the meme of, and I critique centrism of any variety by the fact that it's so loose, so brittle, that it never has any staying power outside of things are going very well, so people are sort of don't give a toss about culture or anything. But the moment things start going poorly, people want substance, people want direction, and they will grab to ever more extreme ideologies.
Mhm.
How
Radical
would you
extreme
define
centrism.
woke? Radical centrism, yeah, that's the one.
That's in the Tim Pool sense.
Yeah, it's rubbish.
Your definition is concise. So if there was any, if like for me to add anything is only going to make it less accurate. So
Okay,
yeah, that's ultimately obviously what we mean. What's meant by woke. I understand that people can use woke
yeah.
in any number of ways,
There's
but
James Lindsay is on his crusade against the woke right.
yeah, I haven't quite figured out what the woke right is.
Basically, identity politics of the uh, non-progressive variety, let's say.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so then the woke word is being used really to be anything with identity politics by
Yeah,
him then. And so it's
yeah.
woke left and woke right.
So I
Interesting.
don't think that's how things work. The big problem with these development of terminological inexactitudes is that people, when they dislike something, they try to associate it with something that is generally disliked. Uh, you know, uh, I hate the level at which in the US for decades political discourse has been going. If you say, "Oh, I think we should have nationalized healthcare," everyone's like, "Oh, so you want the gulags?" Like, no, there are quite a few steps between wanting national healthcare and wanting
So Brad
gulags.
says woke actually refers to being aware of structural racism and how it shaped the current conditions in the USA. But
Yeah,
you see,
that's
even
how
the
they
use of
would
your
use it.
yeah, even the use of your language of being aware of structural racism, how it's shaped, right? That's how you would define yourself, right?
Yeah, that's how it was used originally, allegedly, by black people in America. That's my understanding of its
Yeah,
origins.
so you're
But it
woke to the
became a
problem.
parody of itself by constantly getting ever more granular and stuff, and going into absurdities, right?
Hmm.
So we've seen all sorts of, how people use statistics to try and get like what are called victim points, and there's like there are very few people I find to be more deplorable than statisticians. Because, just kidding. Like people, it's how you interpret them, how you cook the books and stuff. Um, but yeah, it became a parody of itself. So if you want to use it in its original uh, meaning, that it would mean that. I don't deny it. The problem is with terms, they develop over time. And, I'm trying to say that it's not socialism to want like national health care, because they will say things like, oh, so that's you want the government to have power. Like, yeah. And if you want to be consistent, then be an anarcho capitalist. Don't come to me like, oh, we should have a standing army, we should have like a police force run by the state and stuff. I can't believe someone as intelligent as Rand Paul said that if you want nationalized healthcare and you can call a doctor at 3 a.m. and stuff, that's basically slavery. Okay,
Oh,
so you can call the police at 3 a.m. Like,
okay.
probably not to chat, they won't be too happy. But you can call them up if you're being burgled. So if I'm having a heart attack at 3 a.m., I can't be like, oh, well, if I call a doctor now, I'm
That'd be
assuming we have a national
slavery.
health. I'm not going to be a bloody slave owner. and
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
die. Better die than besmirch my good name, right? So uh, it's nonsense, but it is just constant appeal to things that are already unpopular. Just call everything communism. For the left, is just call everything fascism.
Hmm.
Everything is racism, sexism, and whatnot. And it's all Marxism, socialism, communism if you're on the right. As long as, because you don't have to defend things if you can associate them with a good thing, and you don't have to defend your position against something if you can associate it with something that is already, seen as deplorable. That's why I said that's the one funny left wing meme I saw in my entire life. Uh, I think we should have nationalized healthcare. Did you know Stalin killed 6 trillion people? That got to laugh out of me because it's stupid reasoning. If you want to go with why private healthcare is better, make that argument. Don't just go calling things like popular names. I'm so upset at people who like get to some point and then they sort of hit a wall. Like they say fascism is because this is what Mussolini said, like the uniting of the private and the public sectors. So people on the progressive side saying, "Well, yeah, that's what's happening," with like the contractors, the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical mafia, the so on and so forth. Like that. That's not what fascists mean when they say that,
Hmm.
because fascist ideology is focused around the nation.
Yeah.
So when they say coming together, they mean coming together for the purposes of advancing the nation. They don't mean, oh, we're going to unite to destroy the unions and keep people's wages low and stuff. Guess what? People, that wouldn't be a very popular message to send to appeal to voters. So people are so shallow, and there is a point to be made about oversaturation of political ideologies and content and all these niche things. By the way, I think you're the first person I've spoken to that pronounces niche as niche.
Oh, really?
I'm,
Oh, because Americans say niche, don't they?
yeah, I've heard niche, I've heard niche, and it
Mhm.
always throws me off. But I remember at the beginning of the stream you said it, and I wanted to commend you for it. And yeah, this oversaturation, it becomes like that joke about the Mennonites, and they're like, "Oh, you mean you're from the Mennonite Church of like Eastern Texas in the city of just keeps adding things like and then one term which is different. Like, oh, you're going to hell." So, and I think it's mostly because people don't want to be serious about how words work, not just because I'm a linguist, but it's a fundamental thing that builds poor tribalism. Like I'm not against tribalism per se, but it builds this naive, weak, tribalistic uh, organizing around very weak terms that are interpreted in a presupposed sense. Right, you're already viewing it through a lens, and I think that leads nowhere, but
Mm.
it allows for a lot of grifters
Yeah.
to gather audiences, right? Oh, we're like America first, and then you have 10 people who call themselves America first, and what that means.
Yeah, yeah. You can kind of load an expression, and you can speak only in loaded terms, right? And you never really have to say much, but you can say a lot, or you can
Yeah,
certainly give the impression that you're saying a lot, right?
right. I mean, like left and right mean different things in the U.S. than they do in Europe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, 100%.
So, like in Australia, the Conservative Party basically is called the Liberal Party. Like, Americans would lose their minds over that. Like, but how can like they're basically like the Tories,
Okay,
and then
okay.
the Tories, the Conservative Party. How are they conservative? So that's just nomenclature. But even when they say left wing, right wing, like in America, right wing means you love capitalism. Yes, we need. You would dig every forest you can imagine. If you see a forest, dig through it. Whereas in Europe, like the right, not very fond of like the capitalist thing. They see it as
Well,
destructive and degenerative and so on.
Well, Manuel, who I presume is currently reading Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, says he doesn't hear any difference between the pronunciations.
uh, get a better headset. Well, Emmanuel. Niche, it's like sh, like in shroud, and niche as in
Nietzsche. And niche, as in I don't know what niche is. Like there's no niche.
niche. It's one of those things I hear that just brings me pain.
And it's funny because often Americans will make extra efforts to be that sometimes they're over the top with trying to sound like the word from the original language more so than we are here. But when it comes to niche, they just go off the reservation altogether.
Again, I understand in let's pronounce it like Nick. Like if you've got like words like character and chronological, a ch, if it's derived from Greek, is pronounced as a k. So why not Nika? Uh, um, but yeah, that's a difficult thing with English. Depending on the word origin, you will pronounce a ch as how it's pronounced in the original one. So it's from French, you get a sh sound, like chandelier,
Mm.
chivalry, etc. Specifically, it means from a more modern type of French, because if you ch in Old French is a ch, like Nietzsche, right?
Okay.
That's where you get your words like challenge, right? But then French changed and it became a sh. I blame
Fascinating.
it on being
You're
Mexican.
such, it's so funny when you drift into
I,
linguistic.
I, I drift into all sorts of places
Yeah, it was a
where
music stream.
mixed bag. But you never
And
know
it's
what you're getting.
and it's funny because clearly we're not seeing eye to eye with Brad as the stream goes on. But when
Mhm.
he said you haven't mentioned woke yet, I was kind of like, yeah, we kind of lost the run of ourselves halfway through there somewhere. We made a lot of good points, but we lost the run of where we had planned to head. I think.
Yeah, yeah, well, he agrees with us. It's just it's lazy to avoid policies because they want to put it in a category. Everything is about a bit more on languages. There's a principle called linguistic economy. Like everyone's got a tendency to say as much as possible by saying as little as possible. Right? That's how words get bungled together. Like phrases become indiscernible if you're a foreigner. Like, is he saying what I think he's saying? And we think as humans in phrases. So there's also a presupposition of what a word means when you're reading things. For example, that's a huge problem we have with sola scriptura when we're discussing theology. If you just presuppose what a word means, and you say it's obvious that it means that, there's nothing that can be done. But as far as uh, everything becoming trying to KO and find these singular points of failure in your opponent, it really destroys the quality of discussions. And I believe we need to have more discussions about discussions. I'm joining the Daily Wire. But
Yeah.
it's really, you see how pathetic the state of conversations are around the internet. Like, there's been a huge spike in debates, right, with the Crucible and modern day debates and everything. Um, but it still lends itself so much to trying to find a singular argument that just destroys everything, and that's not how discussions, produce good fruit. If you've seen me debate, I try to avoid. I do go for the jugular, but I don't try to rely on rhetorics and stuff, which is what a lot of people do, because it's very effective, but it's a very low instinct, very base instinct that I
Mhm.
think we should avoid. And it's basically turning everything like, oh, let's have like fencing and MMA and stuff like that, or oh no, let's just shoot cannons at each other. Okay,
Yeah.
people would watch that for the splattering of guts, not for any sportsmanship.
So Nick pointed out that the corporate wokeness is I lost him, is about trying to expand their customer base outside of mainly white males. People do respond better to media, which they can see themselves. Well, I think they're going to find themselves constrained to having a largely male audience, no matter what they do, because women, as a statistical group, just aren't going to enjoy the game as much, and that's just the nature of men and women. But the one thing I'd point out about it is that when I said earlier on, when I mentioned that if we want to say that GW are woke, I actually don't think GW have gone woke as such. I think GW are British, and I think they're kind of, and with the nature of British
So they're
culture is
they're
that they are
fundamentally
careful.
evil, is what you're saying.
Yeah. But no, the nature of British culture is that it's slow moving and careful, and what's the word? They're reserved.
Prudent.
And I think and I think GW will allow Warhammer community, whoever runs that Twitter, to make woke tweets. They will allow whoever's running the Games Workshop Twitter to make woke tweets. They will make a tweet that says, of course, there's always been female custodies. That's what they said. They didn't even say we're introducing them. They say you're all crazy. There's always been female custodies, and they
That's
don't have.
just like 1984, man.
And I think ultimately they're just like kind of tip, 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 kind of just kind of keeping all of this constrained. Like, and I think they're more cleverly than most companies handling the sort of the left wing and right wing neckbeards on social media who get their knickers in a twist, and they're just like don't worry, always, and then they say very little, so that doesn't bother the Spurgs on the other side, and I think ultimately they're handling it.
Yeah, and it's corporate wokeness. It's not getting them more people. Like they're not
Absolutely not.
doing this for the money. They may convince like the higher ups that that's going to get them more money, but at a certain point, like you view the trends, and it tends to corrupt or corrode. Sorry, the fan base. Like, what's the point of like you said, people like to see themselves represented in media. One of my favorite video games of all time is GTA San Andreas. I've never thought, oh, if only CJ was white.
Yeah. It seems like a bizarre claim. Like I hear people saying that all the time. I see it with my kids, and I'm looking at them, and I haven't found any of them to like my daughters never to like PJ Masks because it's a boy's superhero or anything like that. They'll even want the costumes of him, or and my son couldn't. There's no. I don't know about this whole representation. The whole concept strikes me as odd. Like when I was a kid, my favorite we had a lot of the American TV shows that were big at the time, and it was things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Keenan and Kel and the Cosbys and all. At the time, there was
And
quite a lot of
Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Fresh Prince of Bel Air, Sister. There was actually quite a lot at that time of sitcoms for kids that were black people, black
Yeah,
Americans, African Americans, and at no point, like really at no point, watching Keenan and Kel or watching Sister was I like, I just can't imagine that they're me. I don't.
yeah.
I just can't connect with the fact that Keenan loves or what is it? Keenan loves orange soda. I just can't connect with the
Yeah.
fact that like it's bizarre to me. It sounds weird, and maybe there's a segment of society who actually struggle with that. Maybe people who have a liberal bent actually struggle to enjoy shows with black leads, and they kind of project that out
Mm,
onto everyone, and they think that we feel like that, and maybe we are seeing our world where we don't struggle to connect with black leads. I don't know.
yeah.
It's odd.
I've also, cartoons. You have a lot of them that are like Asian based. Like uh, anime is very popular, right? And people actually most people prefer to watch it in like the original Japanese. So it's like, oh, if only they spoke Bulgarian, then I would watch it. Uh, but no, I think people just like coherent stories, and if you keep shifting them, they will abandon it.
Hmm.
Or you have like some type of cartoon like Dexter's Laboratory, and it's pretty disjointed, but it's just these little episodes. But then all of a sudden you make Dexter black or something. So okay, why? What's changed here? So people enjoy a good story. They don't need to feel represented in that sense, some demographic representation. And if you're going to do it, don't do it in spite of what's going on. Right? Don't change what's established. If you want to add, like, I don't know, women to Warhammer, why are you going for the custodies? Right? We have Sisters of Battle are a great addition to. They have like that feminine sort of madness to them, right? It's very appropriate for the universe that
Yeah,
it's developing in.
it's and it's so coherent with like what we see in the world in terms of
Yeah,
like not I don't mean about women, but like there's like a zeal, there's a zeal there that's kind of well represented by it, right?
yeah, yeah. Because women also go for zealotry. They
Yeah,
also go for, but again, it's like the sisterhood. There's a whole, uh, 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 you know, aesthetic to it. There's a whole ethos to it. Um, I laughed
and
so much.
tabletop wise, the Sisters of Battle, they overcome having lower toughness than the Space Marines by bringing bigger guns. They
Yeah,
just so
they're very big on the holy fire as well.
yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah, and it's all zealotry and faith, and they run in and just blast things apart, and that just
Yeah, like the Sisters Repentia, or
Mhm.
Repentia, if you will, just charging in with like a chainsaw and no armor. Like, so they aren't even like, oh, I don't know what I would do. I'm just a wee lass.
Yeah.
No, they're pretty tough, and they're pretty zealous. I want to say I laughed so much. There was like a sister. I saw like a short, YouTube short, where they were explaining how someone who has defected is telling that sister of battle that someone in the ecclesiarchy is like doing heretical things, and a comment under it says, the sisters of battle every couple of weeks. It seems that the ecclesiarchy is doing something heretical, but that doesn't make sense. That's where it ends. So, and I don't know what you want more than that. It's that they don't like the fact that the custodies are the elite, and it's only males. Well, yeah, there's a law reason for it, but now it's
Mm.
always been like female custodies. Okay, did someone add? Someone remove the Y chromosome from the emperor?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Did they drop like a piece of the gene seed and like all the Ys fell out?
hmm
Is
hmm
that how it works? No.
It's just yeah. There's a whole, and even when you watch how the Space Marines are developed and everything, just
Yeah.
like there's a whole book, nearly a whole book dedicated to watching one particular hopeful making his way up through the ranks, and he's one of an elite athlete in his age group of his entire planet, and then he gets, or I'm sorry, of his entire nation. And then he gets taken to this mountain with all these other kids from different nations, and they're all competing to try and become a space marine. I think it's for like the Dark Angels or something.
Hmm.
And then they're going through all these different. No, it's not. Can't be the Dark Angels. Whatever it is, but they get to the top of the mountain, and most of the book follows this guy's story. And he's so elite. He passed all these psychological tests and these strength tests and everything else. And his friends are dying beside him. Most of them don't make it. And then he gets to the top, and they ask him some question, and he fails this final question. So they just pull up a gun and shoot him in the head, and that's like kind of like the end of the book.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's showing you that he is the most elite freak athlete male on this entire planet. They bring him up to basically Space Marine status, and then they're like, nah, because he's not good enough. And then we're supposed to
right.
believe the whole of the Space Marines are just infested with women everywhere, and you're like, planets of men can't produce a single one, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Right, and also it's not, as we talked about, it's not throwing you breadcrumbs. Oh, take your sisters of battle, go shoot. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
it's not. It if the law would support it, sure, but it doesn't, and I don't understand. Is it envy? Probably is, but they, it's just wanting to ruin things, right? They as again as Bill Burr said, you know, women see men like just watching a game, like having like a beer and some pizza, and they're happy. And he said, "Do you know what makes women happy? Nothing." so so they can't enjoy something on that level, so it has to be destroyed.
Well, I know Edward Dutton gets into the concept of the what is it, the spiteful mutants, and he thinks that a lot of it is just
Yeah.
not like a kind of an anger at the world in general and wanting to take down things. But I do think that in the case of the discussion we're talking about, I think there's a type of woke if person who maybe wants who does they've got like a religious sense around this. They've got like a
Mhm.
set of kind of dogmas that they're following and that they've internalized, and within their own logical structure then they're like, okay, we need more representation. This is a dogma. This is
Yeah.
accepted, right?
And
So on the basis,
let the world perish, but this must be done. That's the one I use. There's an old Roman proverb, "Fiat justitia et pereat mundus," which means let justice be done even if the world perishes.
Mhm.
Um, so they tend to apply this for the most ridiculous of things, but that's
Yeah,
basically their guiding principle. They're saving the slaves, they're saving the people from segregation and stuff. They're always saving the world. Meanwhile, they're just annoying people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I don't know. I think there is a like a there's a I can see how you can get into how you can follow. You make one exception and then you just kind of follow the logical tree from there. You
Yeah,
take that base premise and you kind of go from there. Yeah, I think the Sisters of Battle are amazing. They're actually a cool army.
yeah.
Um,
I don't know about tabletop. I know they were introduced into Soulstorm, and I genuinely when like the canoness Selena Agna is like the leading like the faction. You have 9 factions in total. You have Space Marines. Oh goodness, what are they called?
Tau, Sisters of
No, no,
Battle.
no, yeah, but the Imperial Guard.
Oh, right.
I want to say Imperial Army, and I'm like, no, that's not it. You've got them. You've got the Sisters of Battle. Then you've got the Orcs, the Eldar, the Dark Eldar, the Tau, the Necrons, and who's the ninth? Eldar, Dark Chaos. Yeah.
Of
So
course.
and when you have Selena Agner, and she just when you give her like the attack command, just shouts, "Unbelievers must die!" It's like yes, burn the
That's
bloody
what
heretics.
in the novels they're great because everyone's afraid of them.
Yeah,
Like
because
everyone's
they're insane.
yeah, like they adhere so closely to their dogma, and like all the Imperial Guard, especially the Imperial Guard, are
Like,
terrified of
you'd
them.
rather be like fall into the hands of the Dark Eldar than the Sisters of Battle.
Yeah, yeah, but you'll even see like Space Marines, and they're kind of like not that they're necessarily physically terrified of them, but Space Marines will be on their guard because the sisters are going to pull them up on some way in which they are falling short of their duties,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
or
which is
you know,
kind of
like
like a feminine thing, right? It's this obsession, like oh, tuck your shirt in. Da, 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 da. Obviously,
yeah,
a bit broader than and more dangerous than having an untucked shirt.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's played very well. It is again following a very human way of expressing it, and you get the same amount of like terror, and again an additional level of terror because there are even some chapters that like think space marines are mutants, and they get again quite insane. Uh, I can't remember what happens like when they find you guilty of something. They either put you on the like the penitent machine where
Oh
you're like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
juiced up and you're basically like the go die. That's your repentance. Or they put like that thing on their heads, on people's heads, and just strap bombs to them. They brainwash you, like wipe your mind, and just go charge them. If you make
Yeah.
it explode, that's your. That's, so the only people I find more terrifying than the Adeptus Sororitas is probably the Mechanicus, because at least these Sisters of Battle, they do it with zeal. These guys, the Mechanicus, they're so cold blooded about it. Well,
Yeah.
time to turn you into a servant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's
Lie down.
probably a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. Lie down while I start cutting off all your bits.
Yeah,
Like,
and replacing them with all sorts of things. They're legitimately like one of probably for me the most terrifying aspect of the Imperium, because they're also so powerful that even the Inquisition can't deal with them, because
mhm.
all of a sudden, oh, your delivery was delayed. I don't know why. Not
Yeah.
because you told us to stop worshipping the Omnissiah. So everyone's dependent on them, so they have their own power, and there's like a cold-blooded, uh, you know, fanaticism about machinery. I didn't exactly want to play like Mechanicus the game, because I don't like the setup, uh, like turn-based strategy. I may try it at some point. The music is absolutely outstanding, by the way. But
I'm gonna take a hard out at 7 minutes.
no,
Um,
we can leave in like two, just to finish my point.
I'm just
Uh,
warning you, just that's what my hard out is, seven
that's
minutes.
we've reduced down to threats. But you listen to them, and they have this like language that they speak with each other, like the members of the Mechanicus, and it's like just blasts of information, and they hate speaking normal human tongue, and they use like insults for it, like you snapping jaws and stuff. And it's fascinating. Again, it feels like it's followed a logical progression and consideration within the law, that you get a completely new type of fanaticism, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I have to send you like a video where they sample the voices for the characters in the game Mechanicus, and it's genuinely like so powerful and yet terrifying at the same time.
Actually, there's a voice actor who ran. He's just a voice actor who he's English, I think, and sometimes he'll randomly do like a piece out of a Warhammer novel, and sometimes it's amazing. He'll do different characters and so on. I was just trying to see if I could spot him there. But yeah, there's some amazing stuff about with all of that. Commander, oh yeah, that's him actually, isn't it?
And can I say the literally the best line out of any video game ever?
Is
Oh, is show me what passes for fury amongst you misbegotten kind. I've never heard a harder sentence in my entire life. It's so bloody good.
I find it strange that people were so up in arms. I just think, yeah, well, there's probably two factions. There's probably people who were really, really up in arms. Sometimes I think that's interpretation, though, because I know it's hard when you're in a forum or something. And what can end up happening is that somebody like me might come in and I might say, I don't think it makes any sense. But maybe you, Brad, might be on the same forum and you've been maybe in the forum for a few days listening to some other guys just whining about it. And the whole game's ruined and I'm selling all my parts and my pieces and I'm selling all my books and I'm killing myself, right? Or whatever, right? You know, so,
Burn
and
them
then
like Beatles records.
yeah, and then I come in and say, I don't think it makes sense. And I end up lumped in with those guys. And I'm sure the same thing happens in reverse. I'm not saying it only happens one
Yeah.
way. But I think a lot of the time you can interpret that people are up in arms when people are just pointing out, no, this doesn't make sense. This would actually ruin the story. I don't really kind of accept it. Like, I don't really, like, they can say what they want at the moment about female custodies, and they could say, actually, technically, all the Space Marines are women. They're like bees, you
Yeah.
know? I'd just be like, okay, well, that's not true. But, you know, like, it's like if they made like a documentary with where they said, you know, I was on Barricade Garage's stream before, and he told me that the original Irish were actually all black, and that like we've been bred over some period of time to be white, and I was like, It's not true, but it's an interesting theory. Like, and
Ah.
I'm glad you believe in it, right? But so it's the same. Like
You had like
GW
a
can come,
local Yakub. Is that what happened?
yeah. Well, GW can come out and say there's female custodies and there's this. It's not true. Like none of it's technically true, but it's not coherent with the lore. It wasn't the case. It's fine that you're retconning it now for some modern sensibilities, but ultimately, it's not true. Darth Vader wasn't female. Luke Skywalker wasn't female. The Space
Yeah, but
Marines
then
are
they
female.
created Rey Skywalker, who's more powerful than any of them, and she barely had any training and could just defeat anything. Like, okay,
Mhm.
fine. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
type of thing that ruins it.
Yes. And ultimately, it kills the story, and it's more a shame than anything else because you can see what happened. Like I've never really seen any of the recent Star Wars, but I know the series has
Me
been
neither.
killed. People don't like it. Even
I've
people
watched
who
reviews, but not the thing itself.
yeah, and I know that people generally say they're not as good as they used to be. Even people who maybe agree with the messaging and
Right.
with the attempt, they just think the quality's fallen. And ultimately, this is what happens to. We've seen it. We've seen it with multiple series, and it'll probably, hopefully not, but it might happen with Warhammer as well. And that'd be a shame because everyone would just stop engaging with it. But I
Yeah, and
don't
they'll
think.
they'll pick a point at which they stop believing the law is changing from there and take on head canon. Because okay, if you're going to not going to care about it, why should I? I have my own canon and print my own figurines.
And it wouldn't even surprise
Male
me to
sisters of battle. That's how far I'd go.
It wouldn't even surprise me to see them just go back and retcon things again. You know, like in 20 years from now, companies, if they're still around, like, you know, the way with the female Ghostbusters, they went with the female Ghostbusters, it
Yeah,
bombed, and then they were like, actually, we're going straight back to the original story, and they just started following on from there. And
right.
they've done it with other things as well, where they've just gone, that never happened. Moving. Actually, the original thing is still the real one, and they just ignore it as if it never happened. And I think that's what we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting very close to your hard out, so we should be heading
Yeah,
off.
unfortunately for me, I have children, pesky, pesky children. So, all right, guys. Sorry, we've been all over the place with this, but that's the nature of two people, you know, who are probably both mildly autistic,
Yeah,
and
I would
can't keep
assume so.
and can't necessarily keep themselves away from like those tantalizing tangents. So thanks for watching. Sorry to anybody who got cut off when I cut off from my own channel. We'll be back again. The aim is, if we can remember and stick to a schedule, that we will actually try and start streaming on Saturdays, every Saturday. We might try and put a bit more work in the next time we do a Warhammer video and maybe a bit of prep. What do you reckon?
I hope we can achieve it. It shouldn't be too hard, but considering who's involved, um, a lot harder than it should be
So
reasonably expected.
yeah, see you in 6 months, guys. All right, bye, bye, bye.